What's the biggest red flag you've seen on a first date? Not mine, but I had to pick up my friend from the side of the road because her date picked her up, then pulled over on the side of the freeway to see what was in the forest. She got out of there and never heard from him again. This sounds terrifying. For me, it was when she mentioned that she was not single but did, in fact, have a husband, but it is okay because he has been in jail for about 5 years and will not be released for at least 6 months. Oh no. We were playing mini golf and he was losing, so he screamed, all red-faced, and hit the ground multiple times with his golf club. He asked me out a second time and I said no. He claims he didn't know what he did wrong. Shoulder told him wheel, I don't date bad putters. Oh lord. I went on a date with a guy who admitted he fell asleep on his baby while drinking and the baby was killed by accident, so he has manslaughter on his record. Like legit. This happened, and the date only got weirder when I went to nope out. He followed me to the bar where I was practicing with friends for a pool leg. He proceeded to get drunk, puff his chest up, and ask my guy friends why they were talking to his girl. I was mortified. A guy got mad that I walked on the other side of a tree from the side he walked on. Like we were walking down the sidewalk. A tree was in the way. He went to the left of it and I went to the right of it. He was mad I didn't go left with him. I asked why he didn't come to the right with me if it was so important that we be on the same side. He did not like that response and I ended the date briefly thereafter. He showed up to my house 3 hours later and stood outside my door for an hour and a half, trying to coerce my roommate to let him in, saying he had forgotten something inside. She didn't, as I was asleep and she thought it was dodgy. I never told him where I lived. So scary. He took my phone off of me and when I wouldn't give him the passcode I had to physically wrestle it off of him. First date. I wish I was joking. I literally just commented this, but I will add it to yours as well. We went for a joyride and he took me somewhere I didn't know and started telling me how he could put me in a hole out there and no one would ever find me. He then took my phone and held it out of his car window while I tried to get it back. This guy kept pushing me to let him come to my place, to the point where every sentence was like, well, let me come over and, where can I sleep tonight with you? Where do you live? Let's go to your place after this. I was like, guy, you're never coming to my house, and he kept pushing it and I started to feel the hairs on the back of my neck standing up. I got out of there and drove around to make sure he wasn't following me before I went home. He messaged me after like, I just wanted to see if you'd cave and let me come over. I messaged back like, you're a creepy sucker, and blocked him. He kept trying to match with me again and even got my email before I finally got rid of him. Weirdo. You probably avoided a very terrible stalking experience by inches. At the risk of outing myself, I was the one who showed the red flag. Took a girl on a date and completely forgot her name to the point where I had to eventually ask her. We never spoke again after that. I went on a date with a young captain in the army. He invited me out to dinner, which actually was just wings at the bar with like 10 other army guys he knew. That's not necessarily bad, but struck me as strange because I was the only girl in the group. I'd normally have expected at least some of the other guys to bring their SOS, but no biggie. As the night went on, the table conversation went into lewd territory. Now, I can hold my own with rowdy dudes and I'm pretty easygoing, but it turned out he procured me for a gangbang. Specifically, he said they would make me famous in a porno. I was so freaking furious, I couldn't even speak. I just noped right out, and that's why I take my own car and don't drink on a first date. This is one of the worst things I have read in this thread. Frick. Already drunk when I got there. Had a bag of possessions with him because he had just been released from the hospital and had taken the bus there. Finished the last 2 inches of my beer. Wanted a ride to the place he was house sitting. The best part was saying he thought we really hit it off and could see us moving in together in a few months if everything went well. Bro was looking for a place to stay. I once went on a date with a man who told me that he had battered his previous girlfriend. He seemed to feel sort of bad about it, but also told me that she made him hit her, so it wasn't really all his fault. I didn't see him again. That's not a red flag, that's a stop sign. Not taking their eyes off their phone at the table. I mean, why even bother going on a date if you're going to spend the evening on social media? A girl asked if I'd be willing to get rid of my cat that I'd had for 8 years. She wasn't allergic. She said that she just didn't like cats. Insane level entitlement. I didn't know it was a date. I'd gone to happy hour with another department in the company and 2 weeks later one woman from there said they were doing another one and asked if I'd like to go. I showed up and it was just her roommate and her roommate's boyfriend, and they had a table for 4 in the restaurant area of the sports bar. She told me everyone else was running late so they got a table to get a bit to eat first. I thought it was odd, but then the roommate mentioned something about it being their first double date. Nobody else from work showed up, lol. For me has to be the time that he got pee that I walked up to the bar to get a drink and that I left him sitting alone for too long, and then he decided to yank me off the bar stool and broke my ankle. He then called me after asking to get together again. That's not just a red flag. That's freaking neon blinking. Went out with a guy I met on Match on a Saturday night. I knew he was a widower, and during the date I asked him when his wife had passed. He said Monday. Maybe he needed a date for her funeral. She had a litter box with a great pyramid of cat crap in it. The smell punched me in the face. I immediately turned around and got in my car. I have a cat too, but I take care of her. That's just nasty. Her poor cat. When his wife had some very ugly things to say right before our date, he told me they were separated and in the process of a divorce. They were very much still together. Partway through the date, I mentioned that I worked a job while going to college. We met in a shared class. She told me she couldn't respect me for working while going to school. It showed I was poor and implied I was beneath her. I feel like this is a new low. Never heard of a guy getting dumped because he had a job. What an entitled B. A guy refused to pass through a door because I was holding it for him and got mad because I was making him look bad in front of other people. A guy cringed at that. My first date in 6 years after getting out of a long-term relationship. Asked what she did for a living. She simply dismissed it and didn't tell me. I thought it was strange, but I didn't think much of it. I was not super confident, but I feel that the date was going great. Spent the night together, but she left before I woke up the next morning. She forgot her watch and asked me to stop by her work to return it. Turns out she was a co-worker to my ex-girlfriend and they hate each other. Well, I fricked your ex last night, you B. Went on a first date after hitting it off with her on a night out. Within the first hour she told me she was highly judgmental and high maintenance. Bonus points for honesty, but no thanks. Extra info: she was undoubtedly a very intelligent and attractive woman. However, the vibe was just a bit off for me. Oh, she also kept referring to herself as a shark in her professional life. Date 2 never happened because I just felt like it wasn't needed. Plus we are both adults, and I'm a strong believer in not wasting my time or that of others. That level of honesty is intriguing. I think I would have gone for date 2 just to see what's up. She saw her ex-boyfriend, went over to talk to him, eventually hung out with him and his friends and then left with him to another venue. She was polite enough to also invite me to the next venue with the ex-boyfriend and friends. That's just plain disrespectful. This was a second date, but whatever. Still the biggest red flag I've ever seen. She came over to hang. Had a hard time finding my place. Well, I live in an apartment complex that doesn't have handicapped parking. There's an old man in our building, Navy veteran, who has Parkinson's. He doesn't walk too well and we as a community have decided to leave the closest spot open for him. She had a hard time finding the place, so I walked out so I could wait her down. She sees me and starts to pull into my elderly Navy veteran who has Parkinson's neighbor's spot, and I tell her not park there and I explain the situation to her. Her response: I don't see how that's my problem. She did not get a third date. The restaurant had closed and it was clear the staff wanted to go home. I had been trying to leave since 10 minutes before they closed to be a courteous person, but he was not budging. It just gave me the ick. Never tolerate someone who is rude or acts superior to retail or service workers. It speaks to a lack of appreciation and empathy and an entitled mentality. Thankfully we hadn't gone out yet, but first phone convo with a guy yielded that he had 3 kids. The youngest was 3. One he didn't think was his and he wasn't allowed to see the other ones because his ex claimed he was abusive. He also wasn't paying his child support, so he had a bunch of debt from that. I made some dumb excuse about having to let the dog out, and that was the last convo. He pulled up in a beat up old truck, which in itself is not a red flag, but he parked in a no parking zone, which is kinda weird. Then he proceeded to get out of the truck and stare into my soul. Didn't say hi, didn't smile, didn't do anything. As if that wasn't already uncomfortable enough, his younger brother then hops out of the passenger seat and does the same thing. I walk up to them and say hi and ask how they're doing, and they just kinda look me up and down and scoffed at me. Needless to say, I turned around and left. Not good enough to be their family's next brood mother. A guy told me he loved me and he wanted to pay off my college debt. Still wish I'd had said yes, but he creeped me out so bad I noped the frick out of there as soon as I felt able to. He was trying to hand feed me olives about 10 minutes into the date. I wanted to run away so bad. Olive you. I went on a first date with a seemingly normal and well-adjusted woman. During the first drink she told me that she wanted to have a baby with a redhead. I'm ginger, and she'd give me £5 to impregnate her and sign a contract stating I'd have no parental responsibilities, but didn't get a second drink. She didn't want a second date. Literally didn't even try to talk to me, just asked me out, got Wendy's and then sat there in silence. I tried to make conversation, but he just kept giving me one-word answers or just saying IDK. It was awful. He started proselytizing at me, saying that he found God and traded in his drug-addicted past to have a relationship with Christ. Honestly, that didn't weird me out too bad as I was raised Christian and that was pretty par for the course. But it was after that, he started talking about One Piece and comparing himself to Luffy. I don't know, never seen the show and never will, and basically said after converting to a God-honoring life that he gained Superman Luffy-esque superpowers for real, but that he would be willing to give them all up if I married him. After we got married, he said we would take a bunch of orphans on a trip to Disneyland to give them the best experience ever, but not adopt them. He also lectured to me about abortion despite having never brought it up. Actually, I didn't really talk much at all during this. He mainly talked at me. He didn't even bother to ask if I was religious before trying to convert me, and reminded me it was a sin to kill fetuses. This was all during a game of tennis, my first time ever playing, and we were just volleying back and forth and he kept ragging on me for my form and said I wasn't any good. After that he made me go to the deli with him, despite having told him I was a vegetarian, and made me sit down and listen to crappy EDM on his new, bulky but generic brand headphones he raved on and on about, and showed me the layout of his new online store he was about to launch that was going to be revolutionary. He sold stick-on LED lights and lava lamps. I ghosted him after that, but unfortunately, he knew where I worked. That's where he asked me out, and stalked me. One time I was smoking behind the grocery store next to my work, after I closed, with a platonic male friend. At this grocery store is where the guy worked. He found me out back and threatened to beat my friend with a baseball bat. I started screaming. He dropped the bat and ran away. There's honestly so much more to say here, but that should give a little taster. When I asked what she was looking for in a partner, she answered with codependency. I said I think that being in a relationship should be like a chocolate peanut butter cup, with both flavors. People being good by themselves, but amplified by being together. She said that didn't make sense. Probably texting her entire family with live updates in front of me and sending pictures to prove to them that I was real. We met on a dating app, then telling me that they were already inviting me to all of their upcoming vacations. Passing up a free vacation is a serious red flag. Went to the movies. After we sat down, she rather rudely said, "Well, are you going to go get us some popcorn and drinks?" I said, "Oh yeah, I can do that," then left. Chinese flag tattoo on the side of her neck pretty much told me we would not see eye to eye. I am a Taiwanese citizen. A little red flag. First thing the guy did, out by the valet station, was grab my hand, kiss the back of it, and lick it. Valet was as horrified as I was. After we were seated, he kept talking about his wife who died, kept saying that he was the daddy now, talked about how much he hated her dog and got rid of it as soon as she died. The same day, he said, He ordered ribs, ate them with his hands and kept smacking his lips and slurping his fingers. I lost my appetite completely. Then he looked at my plate and asked, "Are you going to eat that?" When it was finally over, we went out to the valet station and he tried to grab my hand again, but I managed to evade that. I had self-parked. He had parked valet. The valet found the guy's keys, looked directly at me and told the guy that his car was in back, that it might take him a couple of minutes. I nearly sprinted to my car and I was out of there so fast. I also turned away from the direction of home and took a long detour before actually heading home. Date itself went super well, so we went back to his place. We were gearing up to do the do. He took his shirt off, had I am and butthole tattooed across his chest. He literally spelled it out for me, but I like to learn the hard way and dated him for almost 2 years. The first thing he did after greeting me was calling his ex, asking if she was okay and telling her that I wasn't a creep. I'm so confused. She wanted drinks, but didn't want me to pay for them. She walked up to the bar and sat next to a guy sitting alone, talked to him for a while, basically flirting, and walked away with a drink he bought for her. These people saying it's okay when it's clear manipulation is the real red flag. He pulled up with a handle of Tito's and 16 ounces bottle of cranberry juice and some plastic cups. He had clearly dipped into it already. Talked about how much he wanted to eat my pee for 5 minutes. Stepped outside and peed all over the side of his truck. Continued talking. Refused my hand sanitizer. Was confused when I got out immediately and drove off. There were multiple within the hour or so. 1. Multiple mentions of ex-girlfriend. I knew her name and everything. 2. Ordered an appetizer I specifically said I didn't want. 3. Claimed he owned his own business and that was why he dropped out of college. It's his dad's business. I don't care if you drop out of college, but while I. 4. Ordered an ice cream dessert after mentioning during dinner I don't eat dairy. 5. The bill. Over the course of dinner I'd had 2 tacos and a beer. He'd had a bigger dinner and the other courses he ordered for himself. He suggested splitting the bill. I told him I didn't want to kiss him or go home with him. Thought that was enough of a message to exhibit I wasn't interested. Sent me a dong pic about a week later. I blocked him. 3 things. 1. She said she was pregnant. 2. She said the father wants nothing to do with her or the baby. 3. When I asked her if she was getting an abortion, she said she was keeping it to help preserve the white race. First of these I chuckled out loud at. I was at a restaurant and saw one of my guy friends. He was like a brother to me. He walked over and said hey. I introduced him to my date. After my friend left, he literally only stayed at our table for 1 minute. My date goes, I just want to be clear, but I don't approve of you having guy friends. We didn't speak again after that date. 1. Talked about his ex the entire date, making sure to tell me multiple times what a nice guy he was. 2. Checked in with his mom via cell every 1/2 hour or so. He was 27. She was not in the hospital. I asked. She did not live with him. I mean, my son and I are close, but FFS. He would never call me to let me know what he ordered at the restaurant he was at on a date. I went on a date once and we went to a local bar, got drunk, went back to his house with some mutual friends. He locked himself in his bathroom, drunkenly. I somehow managed to barge in. I found him doing H, and long story short, 5ish years later now he's dead. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.